There is a barn in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, that has not had a single termite in 47 years. No treatment contracts, no annual inspections, no tenting, no chemical injection. The farmer who owns it spent $1 on the compound that made it possible, and has never spent another cent since. He walked me to a shelf in the back of the barn, picked up a paper bag, and said 2 words: Diatomaceous earth. He said the people selling you poison have known about this since 1950. They just never told you. This compound kills every crawling insect that enters your home, including termites, cockroaches, and bedbugs, without a single synthetic chemical. It carries no risk to your children, your pets, or your groundwater. The pest control industry has spent 70 years making sure you associate this with swimming pools instead of insect killer. The average American homeowner spends $612 a year on pest control services. Over a 30-year mortgage, that is $1,860. Residential treatments have a residual effectiveness of approximately 90 days, which is exactly why you pay every quarter. The compound I am describing cannot stop working because it does not work through chemistry. It works through physics. Diatomaceous earth is the fossilized skeletal remains of single-celled aquatic organisms called diatoms. These organisms built their cell walls from silica, the same mineral compound as glass. Under magnification, it is a collection of razor-sharp crystalline fragments that penetrate the exoskeleton of an insect at the cellular level. The particles attach to its body and abrade the waxy coating. Once compromised, the insect begins to desiccate and dies of dehydration. This process cannot be resisted. An insect cannot develop immunity to a physical mechanism or evolve out of a microscopic blade. In over a century, not a single resistant population of any insect species has ever been documented. Not one. That is the detail that changes everything about how you think about pest control. Now, here is the history that the industry has spent decades burying. I mean that there is a documented paper trail showing when this knowledge was removed from public guidance documents and who benefited from its removal. In 1950, the USDA published a technical bulletin titled Non-Chemical Control Methods. The bulletin documented diatomaceous earth as the most effective grain storage protectant, noting treated grain showed 0 insect infestation after 18 months. It worked. Then in 1947, something else happened. DDT was released for civilian agricultural and residential use following its wartime success as a military insecticide. Within 3 years, DDT in the synthetic pesticide industry had completely displaced non-chemical pest management guidance from every major agricultural publication in the country. The USDA redirected its research funding towards synthetic compounds. Extension offices stopped distributing non-chemical bulletins. Agricultural colleges restructured their curricula around chemistry. The 1950 bulletin was not retracted or discredited. It simply stopped being referenced. It stopped being taught. Within 1 generation, the knowledge nearly vanished. It existed only in the memory of independent researchers and communities that never needed the industry's permission to manage their land. Communities like the Amish. But most people think the DDT story ended in 1972, when the EPA banned it. It did not end there. It just changed characters. When Rachel Carson published Silent Spring in 1962, she documented something the industry had known and actively suppressed. DDT was not just killing insects. It was moving through the food chain, accumulating in bird tissue, thinning eagle eggshells, and killing fish in waterways miles from any treated field. The EPA banned DDT in 1972 after years of industry lobbying and public relations campaigns designed to discredit Carson and delay the science. The National Agricultural Chemicals Association spent millions fighting the ban, claiming it would result in massive crop losses and human starvation. None of that happened. The crops survived. The eagles came back, and the chemical industry did what it always does when one revenue stream is cut off. They developed new chemistry and rebuilt the market around it. The synthetic pyrethroids used today were developed in the 1970s and 1980s to replace DDT. They target insect nerve function through a similar mechanism. They were marketed as biodegradable and as the responsible evolution of pest management chemistry. Some of that was true. Some of it was the same thing the DDT manufacturers said about their product in 1947. What was not said, what was never prominently said, was that the pyrethroids would generate resistant insect populations within 20 to 30 years. The science predicting resistance was available when the products were launched. The industry scientists knew. The regulatory submissions documented the resistance risk. The marketing materials did not mention it. Because a product that generates resistance generates repeat customers on a 90-day cycle. That is not an accident. That is a business model built into the chemistry itself. Through 60 years of chemical pest management sold as the only modern approach, the Amish kept reaching for the bag of powder on the shelf. The Amish in Lancaster County never adopted DDT or synthetic pyrethroids. They kept using what had worked for the previous 2 centuries. Their barns have no termites. Their grain stores have no weevils. Their homes have no cockroaches, because they apply ground silica twice a year. Let me tell you exactly what the Lancaster County farmer I visited does. His barn is a post and beam structure built in 1977. Every spring and fall he applies food-grade diatomaceous earth to the sill plates where the wooden structure meets the concrete foundation. He covers every expansion joint, crack in the foundation, wall voids around pipes, and the interior corners of every wall floor junction. He uses a hand-crank powder duster that he bought once for $12 and has used for 20 years. The application takes 3 hours. His total annual cost is approximately $8 a year, against a national average of $612. The difference is a working farm with structural integrity and clean soil versus a property where pyrethroids are injected into the soil. The EPA has documented pyrethroid contamination in groundwater. The Amish farmer's groundwater is clean. His soil biology is intact. His children play in the yard without restriction, and his pest control costs $8 a year. Now I need to address why this knowledge disappeared from American practice so completely that most people have never heard of it. The synthetic pesticide industry in America generates $16 billion annually. The residential and commercial pest control services sector generates a separate $22 billion. Together, that is $38 billion built on recurring chemical treatments that stop working every 90 days by design. Diatomaceous earth does not generate recurring revenue. You apply it once to a clean, dry surface and it stays effective. Inside a wall void, inside a sill plate cavity, inside a crawl space, it can remain effective for years. A single 5-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth costs $8 to $12 and treats the entire perimeter. You cannot build a $38 billion industry on a product that costs $12 and lasts for years. They made diatomaceous earth the pool chemical, the thing you buy in 50-pound bags for your above-ground pool filter. A different grade, a different particle size, a completely different product that has been heat-treated. The food-grade version, the one that works, is available at farm supply stores, some hardware stores, and online. The particle size is unaltered. The silica crystals are intact and sharp. That is the only specification that matters. I want to walk you through exactly how to implement this system in a home you already own. People say, I live in a finished house. I cannot get into the wall voids. This is only practical for new construction. The most important locations for diatomaceous earth application are all accessible without opening a single wall. Start with the exterior foundation perimeter. Apply a continuous band of diatomaceous earth approximately 4 inches wide. Every crawling insect approaching your home must cross this band. Most of them will not survive long enough to find a way in. Next, the interior foundation perimeter. In your basement or crawl space, apply the same band along every wall floor junction. Third, every point of entry, under door thresholds, around window frames, around every pipe, conduit, or utility penetration. Fourth, problem areas. In a kitchen, apply inside the cabinet bases, behind the appliances, and around the base of the kick plates. If you have silverfish in bathrooms, apply along the baseboard perimeter and behind the toilet and vanity. One critical application note. Diatomaceous earth works when dry. It does not work when wet. A wet particle of diatomaceous earth has its edges surrounded by water and cannot abrade an insect exoskeleton effectively. In areas exposed to regular moisture, including exterior applications in wet climates, you will need to reapply after significant rain events. In protected dry locations, a single application can remain effective for years. The Amish farmer reapplies twice a year as a maintenance rhythm, regardless of visible pest activity. It takes 3 hours. It costs $4 per application. He has never had a pest problem serious enough to require any other response. For termites specifically, termites generate more pest control industry revenue than any other insect, and the fear of termites drives annual contracts. The sill plate application I described is the critical one for termite prevention. Termites entering a structure from the soil must pass through or around the foundation perimeter. A continuous band of diatomaceous earth applied to the sill plate creates a physical barrier that worker termites carry back to the colony. Unlike a chemical treatment that creates a repellent zone, diatomaceous earth does not repel termites. They walk through it, and then they die, and then they carry particles back to the colony on their bodies. And then the colony begins to collapse. This is the mechanism that makes it particularly effective against social insects like termites and ants. The colony effect. Individual workers are not just dying in isolation. They are transmitting the desiccant to nestmates through physical contact inside the colony. A structural engineer named David Hatch at the University of Florida published a technical report in 2008 documenting 23 residential structures. These structures in Central Florida used food-grade diatomaceous earth as their sole prevention measure for periods ranging from 8 to 22 years. Florida, the highest termite pressure state in the country. Subterranean and dry wood termites are active year-round. Of the 23 structures, 21 showed no evidence of active termite infestation. In the 2 cases with minor activity, it was in exterior wood added after the original treatment. Treating that wood eliminated the activity. 21 out of 23 structures in Florida, with no chemical treatment, with a compound that costs $8 for enough material. This report is in the University of Florida archive. It is not secret. It is simply not cited in pest control industry literature. Now I want to tell you about the Amish application from the Mennonite agricultural records. A 1903 USDA survey documented dry mineral barrier treatment. The application described in 1903 is identical to what the farmer in Lancaster County is doing today with his powder duster. The knowledge has been continuous for over 100 years without interruption, because it has continued to work. 120 years of continuous use. 0 resistant insect populations. 0 structural failures. 0 chemical contamination. Against a national industry that generates $38 billion a year by selling you chemistry that expires every 90 days. They have produced documented resistant populations of cockroaches and bedbugs in markets where synthetic compounds have been used for decades. The resistant bedbug crisis that made national news between 2005 and 2015 was the direct consequence of the synthetic pyrethroid industry. Marketing their compounds as a complete bedbug solution through the 1980s and 1990s led to bedbugs developing resistance. The resistance spread. Today, pest control companies charge between $500 and $2,000 for a single treatment, because the cheap chemical solutions simply stopped working. Diatomaceous earth was never part of that cycle. It was never marketed heavily because there was no recurring revenue model to support it. $12 applied once works permanently. That is not a business model. That is a solution. And solutions don't generate billions. The Amish farmer in Lancaster County does not have bed bugs. He has never had them. Not because they don't exist there, but because of physics. The perimeter of his home is a physical barrier that no bedbug, termite, or cockroach can cross without encountering a mechanism that will kill it. Physics does not care about genetics. The number one reason people conclude it doesn't work is incorrect application for their specific pest situation. Cockroaches first. German cockroaches live inside wall voids, cabinet bases, under appliances, and inside the motor housing of refrigerators. Treat every cabinet base, behind the stove, and inside the electrical outlet boxes on any wall that backs the kitchen. Yes, inside the outlets. That cavity is a cockroach highway. Treat it and you interrupt the transit route they depend on to move between food and harborage. For American cockroaches, treat the basement perimeter, every drain surround, and every pipe penetration through the floor. The colony collapses from within. A cockroach picks up particles and carries them back to the harborage, contacting the entire group. Ants next. Spraying around your foundation only kills forager ants. It does not reach the colony, which may be 5 feet underground. Diatomaceous earth applied to entry points kills foragers and spreads the desiccant to the workers, the brood, and eventually the queen. Fleas third. If you have pets, you know fleas are a recurring revenue source. Adult fleas are only about 5% of the infestation. The other 95% are eggs, larvae, and pupae in carpets. D applied lightly and worked into fibers treats the entire life cycle. The same physics that kills adults kills larvae. A single treatment with seasonal refresh collapses the entire flea population permanently. Bedbugs last. And this is the one I want you to think about most carefully, because the bedbug crisis of the last 20 years is the clearest possible demonstration of what happens when an industry builds its entire response around chemistry that generates resistance. Bedbugs were virtually eliminated from American homes by the 1950s through a combination of DDT use and improved housing standards. When DDT was banned, bedbug populations began slowly recovering. By the 1990s, they were re-establishing in hotels and apartment buildings. By 2005, they were in national news. The industry response was to deploy the same pyrethroids they used for everything else. Within 10 years, pyrethroid-resistant bedbug populations were documented in every major American city. The resistance did not develop slowly. It exploded. Because bedbugs reproduce fast, they develop resistance fast. And because the same chemistry was being applied everywhere, the resistant genetics spread simultaneously. Today, a professional bedbug treatment costs between $500 and $2,000 and requires multiple applications. Because the chemistry no longer reliably kills resistant populations on first contact. Diatomaceous earth kills bedbugs regardless of what their genetics say. The physics does not negotiate with resistance. A 5-pound bag applied correctly costs $10 and collapses the infestation within 2 weeks. The pest control company will charge you $1,500 for a result that is less reliable. You now know why. In 1978, the National Pest Management Association published guidance recommending against mentioning non-chemical alternatives in customer communications. EPA registration was positioned as a quality signal. What it actually meant was that the EPA had reviewed the chemical for safety data. A generation of American homeowners was trained to associate professional pest control with EPA-registered chemistry and to view anything else as inadequate. The Amish never read the guidance. They never needed to. Here is exactly what you need to buy: food-grade diatomaceous earth. It will be available at farm supply stores. A 5-pound bag costs $8 to $12. You need a powder duster to apply it. Load the duster about 1/3 full. Point the nozzle at the application location. Squeeze the bellows. A light, even dusting is what you want. Apply in dry conditions. In interior protected locations, reapply annually as maintenance even if you see no pest activity. 3 hours, $8. The same system the USDA documented in 1950 and stopped talking about in 1951. It produces 0 resistant insects and 0 chemical contamination. The pest control company will call you in 3 months. It is about the fact that their product has expired and they need to sell more. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what pest situation you have been managing. I read every comment. The next video is about what the Amish do with their soil, a technique that produces food without fertilizer or pesticide.